set out here.
Hang on a second.
Well, welcome to the Computer Security Seminar at Purdue University. Our speaker today is Ehab Al-Shaer from DePaul University. He's Associate Professor of Computer Science and Director of the Multimedia Network Research Lab. His topic today is toward autonomic security policy management. He changed the screen on me right while I was reading.
Oh,
Ehab.
sorry. Thank you. Let me just do one more of this control here to see if it comes here. CD and VGA. Okay, great. Something had worked with me today. Thank you very much for inviting me here, and sorry for being late here in this talk, but I never thought that Lafayette is closer to New York than Chicago. So I thought it's really the same time zone. So I just figured it out in my way here when I was talking by coincidence. That is, we are in difference 1 hour. So I'll try to make this talk short and to the point. And I will also skip some slides because of this delay. So I'm glad to be here, and I will be talking to you about the autonomic means automated, self-automated management for security policies. And I will focus on two issues or two aspects of security management: verification and optimization. Here's the outline of the talk. So we will first set the ground for the challenges of the next generation security policies. We'll talk a little bit about what is a security policy and what are the current challenges that security policies is facing. Then we'll talk about our contribution in this area in two folds: the verification aspect and the optimization aspect. Verification means how is your security policy is correct? How can you tell if your security policies is consistent and is good enough for your enterprise, for your network? And second one, optimization, means how can I make my security policies as powerful, as efficient as supposed to be? So these are two issues in security are very important. The first one is correctness. How can I make sure my policy is correct? Second one is performance. And we cannot trade one for another. We always have to look for correctness and performance. No one here in this room would like to go and purchase 100% verified, correct protocol, but it will make him wait for an hour to do a transaction on the internet. And no one also would like to go and get something really cheap and fast, but it has a lot of holes and bugs. Somebody else might steal your, there is not correct, means it's not correct because somebody else might steal your password or your credit card information. So correctness and speed or performance, both are important objectives that sometimes we have to compromise between them. Then we're going to show some evaluation and talk about related work. This is just a snapshot of the multimedia lab. This is a selected set of projects is running there. As you can see, we focus mainly in policy management that centered around 4 major themes: verification, optimization, testing, evaluation for security policies. And we do have some other projects in different directions too. There's the members of the Multimedia Lab. Their names are also on the web, and sponsors. This research is sponsored by Cisco Systems, Inter Research, Aramco, Sun Microsystems, and NSF. Here is what I can frame out as a security system that has algorithms, protocols, and also policies. Many people in the past, they have an extensive research and conduct an extensive research in the area of protocols, security protocols, and security algorithms. Very little attention has been made to the policies. But for your attention, policies is the one actually controlling algorithm and protocols. So if we have misbehaved policy, misconfigured policy, then algorithms and protocol does not help anymore. So this is why attention has to go to the policies, not only to the protocols, which is maybe correct, and algorithm. In other words, if you have a correct protocol, verifiable protocol, as well as an algorithm, it doesn't mean that you have a secure system until you have a secure policy or correct policy. Now, what are the challenges in security policies pertaining management of these policies? And I'm talking here about verification and configuration. How can you know if your policy is correct? How can you configure your policy in a large-scale network? This is a real challenging problem for anyone who works in the field of network security, have any exposure during internship or any kind of collaboration in the industry. You would know that any network security device has a policy, what do we call it, a policy, that's manually configured through a system administrator. And this policy is basically a set of rules, simple rules, that specify what packets to allow, what packets to deny. As simple as that. It's an access control rules, tell you what packets being permitted, what packets should be declined, or what traffic should be declined. These policies, although is a rule-wise policies, are really complex in terms of semantics, because the order of the rules gives you a different meaning. Means I can have the same set of same set of rules. If I just flip the order, give you a different behavior. Every time you change the order of the rule, most likely you will get a different semantics. So it's not syntactically what's important. It's semantically what's important here, because we would like to understand how this policy behaves, and that's related to semantics. And this semantics is complex because first, you have to give attention to the rule order. Second, you have to consider policies with different matching semantics. Firewalls, for example, if a rule triggers, if a rule matches, it immediately stops any more analysis. Packets come in, rule matches, that's it, stops there. IPSec, doing it differently. If a rule match, it's going to look for another match. So it might have multi-trigger, what we call it multi-trigger, versus single trigger. So different security devices have different way to match packets. That means your policy also has to go with this. Not only this, but the number of rules that could exist in a single firewall, just single firewall, could vary to up to 15,000 and sometimes 20,000 rules in one single firewall. A very reasonable number of rules in one single firewall, 1,500, and it's just a mid-sized enterprise, 1,500 rules. And you need to know that all these rules are correct and they are in the same order. Okay, order semantics is important. In addition to this, I'm just giving you that just as complication and the challenges of managing security policies. That these policies, which resides in devices, they are not in isolation from each other. Means one policy in firewall might affect another policy in another firewall. So they are interacting with each other globally to form what we call it the global network security policies. So here you are not looking at single device verification, but also you're looking at the interaction between devices and the interaction between the policies of these devices. So you can see how much the problem complexity is exponentially increasing as we look at the number of rules within device and the number of devices within your network. I was giving a similar talk in Intel Research 6 months ago, and they told me that in their enterprise, in their network or enterprise, just in their local California, Folsom, Sacramento area, they have more than 20,000 firewalls, including firewalls in the hosts. Host firewall as well as network firewall, more than 20,000. Everyone can go and download a firewall in his machine or in his desktop or laptop and just configure it. Nobody can prevent you. So we have that now. You have to remember that your firewall that you put in your machine is not the only one determine your policy. There are some other firewalls somewhere in your network that also will determine your total or your complete policy behavior here, and that's a very important issue. So this is not talking about heterogeneity. Different policies have different kind of format. Not talking about the dynamic topologies where topology might be changing. If the topology changed, then the policy has to be changed accordingly. With all of this in mind, we can see that how complex and how infeasible to really manage this manually. So there's no point of doing this manually, and those who are dealing with this issue manually, they have more problems than they have security, unfortunately. Second thing, even if you come to a configuration side, you want to edit a rule or you want to configure a rule, how easy to configure a rule in a firewall? Well, if you have a network of, let's say, 150 firewall and IPSec devices, and then you want to insert a rule, how easy is this? Well, first of all, you want to know what rule to insert and what role this rule will have. What role? Is it for encryption or is it for access control? Third, what device or what sets of devices this rule will have or should have. Fourth, what is the order of this rule in each one of these devices? So it's an elaborate process that it's humanly incomprehensible, and it's very highly error prone if we just do it manually. And this is why you need an automated uniform interface to configure security devices from endpoint view without knowing is this supposed to go to an IPSec device or an IDS device or a firewall device? You have an objectives, and the objective will be translated into rules. Rules will be configured into the appropriate devices without the intervention of the human. You can see from what I just described the complexity of managing security policies in terms of verification or in terms of editing and modification of your security policies. Failing doing this in the correct way or in a correct manner will lead into catastrophe into the network. For example, you may get all kinds of problems. You might get denial of service attack because you allow traffic that comes into your network that's not supposed to be allowed. You can deny legitimate traffic, as we're going to see. Or you can have redundant rules that decrease performance in your network. In another talk, and I'm not sure if we're going to have time to address all these challenges here with the delay we have today. Now, another important thing, which I just going to mention, a very simple thing here about, in the optimization area of policy optimization area is, whenever you configure a policy, your policy is set. It's static. It doesn't change. Is this the right way to do it? I mean, why the policy has to be static? Well, the traffic is not static. The traffic is dynamic. And the properties of the traffic is dynamic. Why the policies cannot be dynamic as well as the policy, as well as the traffic? Why the policy are not dynamic enough to adapt to the traffic properties? What do I get out of this? I will get a lot out of this. First, I will match traffic that's more prominent, more frequent first. So I will decrease the overhead of matching, and I will improve the performance of firewall. Second, I can react to attacks faster. Imagine your policy is static. Novel attacks come in. The policy doesn't change. But if the policy is dynamic, learns the new attack, changed its behavior, so it will reject the attack immediately. That's what we want. That's the challenge of the optimization. When I talk about optimization, I mean that. I mean policies has to be dynamically optimize itself to fit the right traffic and the right environment. This is basically the center of my talk. The theme that really goes across all my talk is autonomic, or you can call it autonomic is a word invented by IBM to mean self-automated. So how we can make policies self-adaptive and self-verifiable policies. So in the first part of the talk, we'll talk about verification. How we can make sure that your policy is free of conflicts. Rule could be conflicting with another rule just because policy were written by different people. You have different system administrators. The policy has been written different times, and this is very normal. So how can you verify, how can you purify your policy from any kind of anomalies or any kind of misconfiguration that might exist in a single firewall? I'm talking about single firewall here. In order to address this problem, we said, okay, our first step simply is to look at the relation between rules in a single firewall. So this is an example of a rule. X and Y, these are two different rules. So it has 5 tuples: protocol field, IP source, source port, IP destination, and then source. This is a destination port. So X and Y are two rules. What is the relation between these two rules? Well, disjoint. They are completely disjoint. There is nothing in common between these two. This is one relation. The other one, they could be exactly matching. This is this one and this one, exactly look-alike. So there's nothing really big brainer about that. So second one, there could be some kind of relation. Like here, X is actually a subset of Y. Rule X is subset of Y, because look at the wildcard over here. That means this X is really subset of Y. Y is a superset of X. So this is what we call it inclusive matching, the relation between the two rules. Here you, excuse me, you have another relation called partially disjoint. Some of the field have subset-superset relation, but others are completely disjoint. Like here, because I have the destination port number completely different. Make these two rules disjoint or partially disjoint. Why partially? Because some part of the rule is actually has subset-superset relation. The fifth one, which is an interesting one, what we call it correlated rules. Simply the correlated rules, two rules that intersect with each other. Imagine two circles here, and that intersect with each other, so they have a common intersection area between them. Where is this intersection here? Look at these two rules, X and Y. Well, the intersection between X and Y is this rule. If a traffic coming to 140, 192, 33, 40, going to 161, 121, 27, 30, is actually this space, this address space exists in X as well as in Y. In this case, we call them correlated because they are not any one of the previous relation. They are not exact match, they are not disjoint, they are not inclusive. This is correlation. So we come up with this kind of a new categorization of relation between rules, which is simple and very straightforward. Next step, we said, okay, by the way, these relations are distinct and they are complete. Means if I take a union of all these relations, I will get the universal relation set algebraically between any two rules. So that means no one will come later on and tell you, oh, there is one relation you forgot. Okay, we have this closure to say, okay, this is the only relation that you can have. So that's a piece of comfort here for us, because now we can now go on in our analysis and add actions to the rule. What our firewall rules has? The condition and action. The condition is what we have seen here. This here is the condition. Protocol, source, port, blah, blah, blah. This is basically the condition. But you can see there's no action. What action firewall will have? Permit or deny. Now, if I put an action over here into this relation, I can now show different classification of rule conflict that could exist in a single firewall. Just by putting an action there, I can, using this relation, will allow me now to determine different types of conflict that could occur in single firewall. So, for example, here, if one rule is coming in an order before, if rule Rx before rule Ry, and Rx is inclusive match, IM here is inclusive match with Ry, the action is different. What do you think this will happen? Let me give you an example. Here's an example, Y and X. If I have this rule Y and rule X in my policy like this, can somebody tell me what the expected behavior here? What is this? What does this mean? What is the relation between X and Y? Y is what of X? Is Y exactly like X? Is Y is superset, subset of X? Superset. Okay. And Y has deny and X has accept. Traffic come in. Distant to rule X, or traffic come in to this particular IP address. 3340 going to 2740. What will happen to this traffic? It will be denied, because Y comes first, and we have to go sequentially in the matching. So y will be hit before x. That means x here is useless. So every time you go and complain, I don't receive my traffic. I don't see anybody. My web traffic is inaccessible. My web services are inaccessible. What is wrong? You go to your policy. You check your policy. You will find a rule say for this web traffic should be allowed, but you overlooked your policy and never know that there is a rule somewhere in the top of the policy that's in a superset of this rule, the shadow, we call it shadow this rule, that makes this rule basically useless and ineffective. And this is one type of policies that you might have, one type of conflict that you might have. Correlation, an example of correlation like this. X and Y are two correlated rules. Now, if there are two correlated rules, so what? What's the problem with this? Well, the problem here is related to the intersected area between them, the area which is common between them. Look, if X comes before Y, as we have in this screen, what will happen to this traffic in the white color going from 3340 to 2730? It will be denied. But if I just make Y before X, this traffic coming to this white address space will be accepted. Now, this sort of ambiguity in the policy is really confusing. And we don't know which one is the right semantics. So the administrator has to be notified about this. By the way, you have two correlated rules. And these correlated rules, there is no one meaning that might be logically always true. So which one you mean? It is something that introduces ambiguity, and this could be classified as also as a conflict. Generalization, I'll skip that because it's not really a conflict. Redundancy is a problem because redundancy means two rules or multiple rules have the same meaning. Why you have them in the same firewall if they have the same meaning? If this rule Y, rule X, have the same meaning, why you have them there? Actually, they have harmful results in your firewall because the more rule you have, the more matching and the more your performance will be degraded. So we need to remove redundant rules. Well, that's a very simple argument. So why we didn't remove them? Because we have to be careful. What do you say about rule X and Y here? Are they redundant or not? X and Y.
Not necessarily. I mean,
Yeah.
It depends whether, on the ports, because especially when you're looking at the ports, if you're looking at from port any to 53, you might have applications that utilize more than the 53 port at that point. If you want to keep the ports open for that, for more than one thing.
You are kind of looking behind these two rules, right? And this is correct. Look at this. If you look at these two, you're definitely going to say one of them I can remove X because X is a subset of Y, and if I take out X, there's nothing changed in my policy. I still have the same behavior in my policy because actually X is a superset, X is a subset of Y, and they both accept. But as our friend just said, I cannot do that. Maybe there's somebody else is having a different range is using it. So what if I have Z in between here? Z is a rule that comes between X and Y. Now this makes X and Y are both mandatory because X is a subset of Z and Z is a subset of Y. Even for this simple relation, redundant, it is not easy to remove as we imagine. You just go and look for two similar rules and remove them. I have to look at redundancy in the context of the entire policy. This Z coming in between makes both of them necessary and makes the policy has a different semantics. And this is what I just want to draw your attention. Even the simple one here is not simple. The last one is irrelevant, and irrelevant means and this is very highly exist in firewall today. Some rules, they are sitting there and never been activated. Why? Because actually the firewall sits in a completely different network, or the IP addresses is not correct. It has been moved from one network to another, is misconfigured, and this we call irrelevant. The firewall will never use them. These kind of conditions or these kind of conflicts, you can see it misconfiguration. Now it's being formalized algebraically in this format, and that has a meaning. What is the meaning of this? Now I can build a simple tool that takes this kind of formalization and just process my policy and automatically find out all kind of conflicts or misconfiguration in my policy without any human or manual inspection of the policy. And that's really the goal of this, to come up with a formalization that's theoretically sound, so and also performance-wise is doable, so we can run this verification on time. Now, this is looking at one single firewall. What if you have multiple firewalls like here? Do we speculate any kind of conflicts between firewalls themselves? Okay, we know there could be a conflict between rules in the same firewall, but is there a conflict could happen between rules of different firewalls? Yes. One firewall might say, allow a traffic, and the other firewall might say, deny this traffic. What will happen here? If a firewall, we call it upstream firewall, say deny, the downstream, close to you, your host firewall say allow, the traffic will be denied, regardless if you say allow or not in your downstream. And this is called shadowing, because my upper hand firewall say deny, and that means I will never receive this traffic. I want this to be clarified. Who's correct? Is it the downstream or the upstream? We have to identify this problem first of all, and then we solve it. The opposite might happen. What will happen if the reverse, the upstream firewall close to the enterprise, close to the internet, for example, allow the traffic, but your firewall in your enterprise deny it? So the traffic goes into your network, travel into your connections, goes all the way to your machine, and is being denied. This is a waste of bandwidth. We call it spurious traffic. This could happen all the time in enterprises, and this could be a potential of denial of service if I have a lot of, if I have, what is that? Do you have a cat here or something?
Maybe.
Okay.
We have run out of time, so if you want to take a minute or two to summarize.
To summarize, sure. So if we want to allow a system administrator to look at this problem and manually inspect it, it's just going to be incomprehensible, because he will not look at an enterprise of 3 firewalls, but you might have hundreds or maybe thousands of firewalls exist in the same enterprise, and you need to analyze them in an automated way. This is what we come up with. 16 conditions. How many conditions we have in a single firewall here? We have about 7 conditions in a single firewall. And what we said before that is a union of this. If you can make sure that every one of these conditions doesn't exist in your firewall, that means your firewall is correct, or your policy of your firewall is correct. Here we have 16 conditions. These conditions, each one of these conditions is to determine one conflict that might happen between two different firewalls. I talked about shadowing, talked about spurious, redundancy is clear to you, I guess, intuitively clear. Let me drop all the way to correlation here. What correlation between 2 different rules in different firewalls might lead to? It will lead to shadowing or spuriousness. This is shadowing or spuriousness. And I hope you understand at least the meaning of spuriousness or shadowing. Shadowing means you are not getting the traffic which is you think it's legitimate for you because some other firewall denying it. Spuriousness means some traffic is coming into you, but you don't need it. It's unnecessary, causing extra bandwidth consumption and potential of denial of service. So what we have done, similarly, we proved that the union of these conditions gives you the comprehensive conflict, and the complement of this makes correct policy. That means there is no other condition that I can add to this in order to make a new conflict or create a new misconfiguration. Now, let me end by showing you the implementation of this, because this is an IPSec. We have done something different for IPSec. Here's our classification of the policies as published in IEEE Communication Magazine last April. We have a really nice, digestible discussion of conflicts and classification of conflicts in security policies that can be understood by even engineer in the field, not necessarily have all this theorem there. And then we also show the implementation of this tool. Let me just, before I go to the implementation. This is the old implementation of the tool, but here we have done an interesting experiment here. I'm going to end with this. This experiment, we pretty much hire 28 system administrators at different levels, expert, intermediate, and beginners, and we give them an exercise, simple exercise, to configure an enterprise of about 4 or 5 firewalls. And then we looked at their mistakes compared to the tool we have. It's interesting to see that, let me use this, that in expert level, in expert level, you can have up to 80% of mistakes. In every 100 rule, there is 8 rules misconfigured. In intermediate level, 13%. In a single firewall, the first table up there is a single firewall. 27% for beginners. In the enterprise distributed firewall connections here, you can have up to 18% of errors in the expert side. In the intermediate side, 26%. In the beginner side is almost useless. It's 40% of errors. 40% means here every 100 rules, 40 rules might be faulty. This is a real life experiment we have done to show this. And finally, the implementation of this, I just gonna show you the most recent one. This is for the enter. As you can see here, I cannot. Maybe I can. You can see here, like for example, this is actually, I'm using IPSec example here, but this is a similar effect. So you have an interface where you can configure your security devices connectivity here. We don't need the whole topology, but at least the security devices topology. And then there's a way to download or upload your policy in, and then you're going to have the result over here. It tells you if there's any spuriousness, if there's any shadowing between two devices or a single device, and also it suggests, recommend an action, how to rectify this problem. Should you eliminate a rule, change a rule, it will recommend. It will not fix it by itself, but it will recommend. This is really, I know it's just maybe most of the talk. There are some other remaining part of the talk, but I would really map you to or refer you to my homepage, which is, to look at some other related issues.
I think we have your homepage on our website.
Okay, good. So anyway, it is here. You can see many papers in this area, and some of these papers are really meant to be read and revised by people who are in the field, and some of them are for researchers who are, looking forward to extend and bring more novelty into this area. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and for your patience of having this 10 minutes or more than that, actually 15 minutes more. Thank you.